What's up, friends? It's Haley, aka Bird, and you are tuning in to the Give 'em the Bird podcast. This podcast is all about challenging what it means to be healthy and fit. It's about celebrating sustainable behavior change and non-scale victories. And most importantly, it's about giving the bird to the diet industry and societal expectations of body size. Why? Well, because at the end of the day, you have an entire life to live that does not require your body look a certain way. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's give 'em the bird. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of GTB. I hope you are all staying safe and healthy. I might sound a bit rough as I'm currently recovering from COVID. Today, the day that this episode is released, it will be 1 week since I tested positive, and it has been a bit of a wild ride. I'm fortunate that I was able to get tested. I am taking paid COVID leave from work. I was able to isolate, etc. But ironically, I actually had this episode all done and ready to go. And then a couple weeks ago, I was listening to it over and I was so distracted by how awful my voice sounded because I was actually getting over a cold when I recorded this the first time, that was my first cold in like 2 years. And now I'm hit with COVID. It's, 2022 is off to a great start. Anywho, I told myself that I would re-record the episode when I sounded better, and look at me now. So I don't know if I sound a ton better. Hopefully my voice isn't that distracting, but I'm actually very happy to be re-recording this episode because over the last week and a half, as I've had COVID, I have had many moments where I have practiced the principles of mindfulness, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And I think that's one of the reasons I feel so strongly about mindfulness. It's not just the practice of sitting and meditating, it's the lessons you learn through the practice that have really guided me through my life. These lessons that I've learned through my practice have greatly impacted my relationships with my body, with food, with movement, with my friends and family, with my career, with nature, and most importantly, myself. And it's because of that I really wanted to dedicate an episode of this season to talk about mindfulness, especially since this season is all about exploring all the other ways to improve our well-being beyond just food and movement, right? So today I'm going to be providing you a brief overview of mindfulness, getting into what it is. Through that, you'll hear me kind of debunk maybe some common misperceptions of mindfulness that people may think about, and also share some ways that you can get started. And then at the end, I will be providing a brief 10-minute breath awareness meditation for folks to try out, especially if you've never meditated before. So stay tuned for that. All right, here we go. So when I was thinking about this episode, I was thinking about how much of an introduction do I need to provide? I think that nowadays, most people kind of have an idea of what mindfulness might be, simply due to the rise in popularity over the last 5 years or so. Like intuitive eating, I think there are many different definitions of mindfulness, but the one that I've really landed on is mindfulness is the act of paying attention to your present moment experience with an attitude of compassionate curiosity. Paying attention to your present moment experience with an attitude of compassionate curiosity. Now, this definition might sound really simple, but many people find it hard to do. And I want you for just a second to think about, when was the last time that you felt fully present with what you were doing? Like, when was the last time you were completely engaged in one thing? You weren't worrying about what you needed to be doing next. You weren't reaching for your phone. You fully felt tuned into something. For most people listening, I'm going to bet it's probably hard to remember a time when you felt this way, at least recently. And that's not surprising. It's not surprising considering our culture, right? We live in the culture of do more, be more, have more, right? That's the kind of society that we live in. We live in this society that praises hard work, hustling, grinding, pushing through the pain, zoning out, and just getting it done. And mindfulness is essentially asking us to do the complete opposite of that. It's asking us to slow down, be intentional, notice what's arising in your body, and allow all things to be. Limit striving or be mindful of striving, right? So developing an attitude of mindfulness, it's not easy. Building this skill is not easy. And when I think about the way that we kind of have to swim against the current of our society in order to build our mindfulness muscle, it reminds me of what we talk about a lot with diet culture too, right? We are essentially trying to undo years of conditioning to be a certain way, right? Our society really pushes us into this work hard mentality, feel less, do more, similar to diet culture, right? And so it's going to be difficult when we begin practicing mindfulness or developing our mindfulness. And it's important to remember that, like learning any new skill, mindfulness is going to take practice. You can kind of think of practicing mindfulness like training your brain, just like you would train your body. Just as your muscles get stronger if we lift weights, our brain's capacity to develop steady, non-judgmental attention, it gets more powerful when we practice mindfulness. When we build our muscles, we start with lighter weights and we work our way up to the heavy stuff, right? We're not just going to walk into the gym, pack on 300 pounds on a barbell, put it on our back and squat with it, right? Especially if we've never done any sort of squat before in our life. The same holds true for building your mindfulness muscle. We're going to start out with the light weight of maybe a few minutes of meditation practice. And as our mindfulness muscle gets stronger, we can lift heavier weights, such as staying focused and calm in the middle of an intense disagreement, right? So we practice with the light weight so that we'll be ready for the heavy lifting that is sure to come our way. So I want you to think about that. Training your mindfulness muscle and building that skill is just like building any other skill. And a really good comparison is building your muscles in the gym. So you may have picked up there that I have mentioned both mindfulness and meditation. So what is the difference between these two? Meditation is really the way that we build our mindfulness muscle. It is the gym for our mind. Meditation is a practice of sitting or lying down or even walking and focusing our attention on one thing, right? So this is, I'm talking about mindfulness meditation. There's definitely way too many forms of meditation for me to talk about in this one episode, but the one that I'm skilled in and trained in is mindfulness meditation. So in mindfulness meditation, when we sit and we practice focusing our attention on one thing, we essentially are focusing on an anchor. We call that one thing an anchor, and it's often our breath, or it might be the sensations in our body. So we sit and we focus on our breath, and every time our mind wanders away from the breath, we gently redirect it back to the feeling of breathing. Over and over again, we do this, right? Over and over again, our mind and our attention is going to wander from the feeling of our breath, and over again, we're going to gently redirect it back to the feeling of breathing. And this is really where that compassionate curiosity piece that I mentioned when I defined mindfulness, this is where that comes into play, because our mind is designed to wander. It's designed to think, to plan, to worry, to do, largely because of the society that we live in. So it's going to wander over and over and over again in one meditation practice. And to expect it to do otherwise is really just unrealistic. So when it does wander, it's not going to do you any good to shame yourself or get mad at yourself. Instead, we just notice, my mind is doing that thing that it does, right? It's wandering again. And back to the breath I go. That right there is the compassionate curiosity piece. It's getting interested and it's getting kind. And I want you to think about just the compassionate piece for a moment. How might life be different if you just strengthened your compassion muscle? If you could bring that compassion into your life. For myself, I know that with more compassion comes less judgment, less negativity, more understanding, more kindness, more patience, right? And so I think that the compassionate curiosity piece, which is often missed when folks talk about mindfulness, I think that is one of the most important benefits that you can get from practicing mindfulness. But there are many. And a lot of these you might be somewhat familiar with, right? I think the largest one that we hear talked about is stress reduction. We are such a stressed out society. And this is a topic that we're going to hear from a guest in the future about stress in general. But with mindfulness, the way that it helps reduce some of our stress is that, we recognize that a lot of the stress in our life, there's a lot of it that's uncontrollable, right? Things that happen to us that we really don't have a say in, that we don't have control over, we don't have power over. But there are a lot of things in life that we do have control over, right? We can control the way we respond to certain things. And I think that we create a lot of stress for ourselves because we spend so much time worrying about things that maybe haven't even happened yet, or we're worrying about things that have happened but we can't change, right? And so with mindfulness, we're paying more attention to the present moment. We're decreasing the amount of time that we spend in the future, in the past, and we're increasing the amount of time that we spend in the present. And in doing so, we just notice reductions in stress. We also notice that mindfulness can provide greater emotional clarity. So just being able to notice the emotions that we're feeling, it can aid in developing self-awareness that informs important life decisions. Self-awareness is something we talk about a lot with GTB, right? Especially when it comes to noticing our interactions with food and movement and our thoughts and our feelings associated with our body and food and movement. So that self-awareness piece is really important. It can aid in faster recovery from aversive experiences. Essentially, it develops resiliency. It develops this ability to bounce back from not so pleasant things. It can improve our regulation of thoughts and emotions. It can improve our mental and physical health, right? And the improvements in mental health is one of the reasons that I found myself getting into mindfulness, because I first learned about it when I had first started therapy for anxiety and at the time depression. And my therapist was like, hey, you should try this out. I tried it and I just did not think it was for me. I didn't think that I could sit still long enough to meditate, which I think is one of the common misconceptions about mindfulness and meditation, that like you have to be able to shut your brain off. And I think me believing that misconception was one of the reasons that I didn't stick with it when I first tried it out many years ago. But the goal of meditation is not to shut your brain off. It's not to think about nothing. It's not to see white walls in your brain. It's, again, finding that anchor, finding that something to rest your attention on. And when your mind wanders, as it's going to, the mindfulness happens when you notice it's wandered and bring it back. So the goal is not for your mind to never wander. The goal is really for you to notice when it's wandered and redirect your attention. So again, that's one of the most common misconceptions I hear from folks, and one of the things that maybe prevents people from getting started. They just don't think they're the right person for meditation. And many times in those situations, I say, I think you are exactly the kind of person that could benefit from meditating or practicing mindfulness, right? If you feel like you can never shut your brain off, or like you have racing thoughts, meditation could really help you in noticing what's going on with those thoughts, or just helping slow them down a little bit. I'd also say that one of the greatest benefits that I've experienced from meditation and mindfulness has been the ability to notice the little things in life. And this is going to sound super freaking cheesy, but I'm going to share it anyways. When I first started meditating, I began with, when I first started with this last bout, and I was actually consistent with it, I was doing it as part of a training for my job. And to kick off the training, I did a 12-week MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction course through the local hospital that is on the campus that I work at. And that 12-week workshop or course, you meet for 2.5 hours every week, and you meditate for long periods of time, like 40 minutes at a time. But one of the first benefits that I noticed was, I was slowing down enough, and I was less in my head enough to notice all these really cool little things that were happening in life. And those little things added up to create a lot of joy for me. And one of those is that when I was first working at the university and starting this workshop, I would always take the same path to get to my parking lot in the morning, the same route. And every single time, this woman who I recognized, she would happen to be at the crosswalk at the same time that I was getting to the crosswalk. So she was walking across, I was driving across, and being the good citizen that I am, I normally would let her walk by. I'm saying this probably happened like 75% of the time. And I recognize the woman because she works in benefits, and I remember her from when I had my orientation at the university at my job. And I just remember her because she had really a good energy and attitude about her. She was easy to follow along with. She was cheerful, enthusiastic. I could tell she liked her job. So 75% of the time, I would get to the crosswalk in my car the same time this woman from Benefits would get to the crosswalk on foot. I would let her pass by, and then I'd be on my way to the parking lot, always thinking about like, oh my God, I'm late for work, because I was always late for work. What's my email gonna look like? Do I have an 8 a.m. appointment? Like I'm freaking out. As I started practicing mindfulness, again, the goal that I was really trying to hone in on was slowing down and paying attention to the present moment. And I started noticing that every time I would let this woman walk by on the crosswalk, this was with pre-pandemic, so she didn't have a mask on. She would smile and wave, and I would feel that same energy that I felt when I first interacted with this woman in my orientation. Just like the good vibes, just when you get around someone who has good energy, and it would just like put a smile on my face and then perk me up a little bit. And I got to thinking, I bet that she has done that every single time, or nearly every single time that I've let her walk by. But I have been so caught up in my head and so focused on getting to my parking lot and worried about work that I haven't freaking noticed it, right? So just one example of how slowing down and being more tuned into the present moment has helped me notice the little things in life. And I think that those little things add up, and they make a big difference in our day-to-day activities. So lots of benefits of practicing mindfulness. I do like to include a little asterisk that says, practicing mindfulness is not the remedy for all suffering. I think that similar to the idea of toxic positivity, there's like this toxic mindfulness very much present online and in the world that makes it seem like once you start meditating, once you start practicing mindfulness, everything in your life is going to be hunky-dory. Like if you can just pay attention more to the present moment, all of your stress is going to go away. All of your suffering is going away. That's not true. Being more mindful doesn't take away all the terrible shit that happens in our lives and in the world. Like no matter how dedicated and diligent your mindfulness practice is, you're still going to face hardship. You're still going to suffer. You're still going to lose things in life that you love. The point of mindfulness is not to remove all suffering from the world and from our lives. The point and what it can help us do is to relate to those situations differently. A little example of this, I'll try to make it brief. If you're having a heated argument with someone and they say something that's really hurtful to you, your natural inclination might be to like spit back something just as harmful and hurtful. Something that digs at a piece of their identity, a piece of who they are, just like they just did to you, right? Maybe that's like pre-meditation, pre-mindfulness. Now, once you start practicing meditation and mindfulness, that same situation might happen. That same person is saying something that's really hurtful and really digs at you and makes you uncomfortable, makes you sad, you feel threatened. Now, you might still fire back with some harmful, hurtful something right back at them, right? But what meditation and mindfulness can do is it can create a little bit of a pause or a gap between stimulus and reaction, right? So stimulus is that person saying that hurtful thing to you. Pre-meditation, you might just react. You might just like not even notice what's coming up for you in your body, and you just do the next thing that you want to do, which is say something as equally, if not more, hurtful back to them. Well, maybe after practicing some meditation, you can notice what's arising in your body when that person says that. Your chest is getting heated, your shoulders are starting to rise, like your eyes get really big, you're getting so mad. And maybe by noticing that, you decide to pause, take a breath, and again, you still might fire back with something just as harmful, or you might decide, you know what, now is not the time. This does not deserve my energy. I'm going to wait until things have calmed down, and then I'm going to have a conversation about how hurtful this was. Or maybe instead, you still respond back, but it's not something as hurtful. Instead, you say, wow, I cannot believe that you would say that. That hurt me because of XYZ, right? So essentially, bad things are still going to happen. Mindfulness isn't going to take away the fact that that person still might say something really shitty to you and hurtful. Mindfulness, no matter how much you practice, isn't going to take away the fact that it hurts when people say things like that to us. But it can create a pause. It can create a pause between stimulus and response. It can just cause us and lead us to relate to happenings in our life in a bit of a different way. So just remember, mindfulness is not the remedy for all suffering. I also want to note that meditation may not be for everyone. I think Again, just like we hear a lot how mindfulness and meditation can solve all the world's problems, we also hear how it's like, if you don't meditate, you should do it. It's for everybody. Not necessarily. For some folks who might have a history of trauma, it can actually be triggered through meditation. So it's important that if you do have a history of trauma, or if you're practicing meditation and you notice certain traumatic responses coming up for you, that you check in with a mental health professional. So just be aware of that, especially towards the end of this meditation or the end of this episode when I'm going to offer a brief breath awareness meditation to take care of you yourself, okay? So how do we practice mindfulness? I've mentioned the meditation piece already, and I say that it's a piece of it, but it's actually a very large piece of the mindfulness puzzle. Developing a daily habit of meditation is, I believe, essential to becoming more mindful. During our meditation, we practice skills of mindfulness that will translate into our daily lives. So during my meditation training, a teacher told me, we don't practice meditation so that we can sit in silence for 10 minutes. We practice meditation so that we can more skillfully respond to the noise in our everyday life. I'm going to say that again. We don't practice meditation so that we can sit in silence for 10 minutes. We practice meditation so that we can more skillfully respond to the noise in our everyday life. This noise is our everyday distractors and disruptors, right? It's the traffic, it's running late, it's our annoying coworker, it's a declined credit card, it's a disagreement with our partner. It's all of the things that pull us away from the present moment and take us into this story spiral that ultimately can create more stress for ourselves, right? Meditation teaches us life skills. It teaches us to sit with discomfort. When you're sitting there meditating and you feel restless, can you just wait 2 more breaths before changing positions? It teaches us impermanence. When you're sitting there meditating and you notice an itch on your back, instead of scratching it right away, can you sit there and wait 2 more breaths and observe how that itching feeling changes? It teaches us acceptance. When we're sitting and meditating and my neighbor Shane starts mowing, instead of ending my meditation early and getting irritated, can I just accept that this is simply another life distraction, another opportunity to return to the breath and continue on? So sitting with discomfort, recognizing impermanence, that nothing is permanent, and practicing acceptance, those are just 3 of the many principles and skills we strengthen with meditation so that when we're faced with real-world situations, they're there to help us. When we're running late for a job interview, can we practice acceptance? When we're faced with overwhelming anxiety, can we remind ourselves that just as anxiety arose, it too will fade, right? It's not permanent. When we're having a crucial conversation about social issues or politics, can we sit with the discomfort and continue to listen to our opposition without storming off or berating them? Can we tolerate it? Can we respect them? These are the skills that really matter in life to me. And mindfulness has seriously played a crucial role in my development of those skills. And it doesn't take years or hours of practice to develop them. I am not some mindfulness guru. Even just 10 minutes a day has been shown to be effective. But if you're just starting out, even just trying to meditate for a few minutes can be beneficial. You can also experiment with different times of the day. Many people find mindfulness meditations in the morning to be beneficial, like getting their day off on a good start. Others might use evening meditations. I think that the time of day isn't as important as the consistency of daily practice. So finding a time that fits for you and your schedule and that you can consistently do day in and day out. Now, another piece of developing your mindfulness is through an informal practice, which is essentially bringing mindfulness to something we do in our everyday lives. It could be washing our hands, brushing our teeth, showering, anything. But essentially, we're bringing our full attention to whatever it is that we're doing. So if I'm washing my hands, you can think about like engaging all of your senses. I'm smelling the soap. I'm seeing the bubbles. I'm hearing the water. I'm intentionally dialing in on this experience instead of just thinking about, what I need to be doing next or who I need to call, what I need to do. The activity or the action isn't the important part. It's just the practice of bringing mindfulness to everyday life. Essentially that we're just skill building. We're building the skill of practicing mindfulness. We're taking what we practice on the cushion or what we practice when we're meditating into our daily life, which again is the whole goal of that practice. So if you're thinking, I would like to try this out. I think I'm ready to give meditation and this mindfulness thing a go, I'd say start with the daily meditation practice. Pick a room in your home, set a timer for a few minutes, and slowly work up to 10 minutes. And during those few minutes, you're sitting comfortably in an upright position. You are closing your eyes if that feels okay for you. You're allowing your breath to be normal and natural. And just find in your body where you most easily feel the sensation of breathing. It could be in the belly, the chest, the nose, the back of the throat, and let your attention rest there. Get curious about what it feels like to breathe. And every time the mind wanders away from the breath, gently redirect it, right? Compassionate curiosity, non-judgment, bringing it back to the breath. So starting with a few minutes of doing that and slowly work your way up to 10 minutes or 20 minutes. If you feel like you need a little bit more support, like you sitting with just a timer on your phone isn't enough, there are so freaking many great resources out there. It's nearly impossible for me to list them all. I'm a sucker for good free options, and a quick Google search will bring you a variety of different free mindfulness meditation apps. If you're interested in paying, I would recommend Headspace. There's an app called Calm, or my personal favorite is 10% Happier. But you can also YouTube mindfulness meditations, 10-minute meditations, that sort of thing. So starting with this daily meditation practice, the formal practice, and can you pick one thing every day to do more mindfully? When you wash your hands, can you do it more mindfully? When you brush your teeth, can you do it more mindfully? So starting with those two things, I think, can be really, really helpful. I think another great way to learn more about mindfulness is simply to practice it. So if you're up for it, I'd like to take the next 10 minutes or so to lead you through a brief 10-minute practice. So for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to lead you through a simple breath awareness meditation. If you are listening to this in the car or listening to this in the place where you are unable to sit in one position with your eyes closed for 10 minutes, you can continue to listen to it, or I might recommend you pause it and come back to it later on in a time where you can have 10 minutes of seated silence to yourself. So to begin this meditation, I want to encourage you to find a comfortable seated position, whether that be in a chair, on a couch, on the floor. Find a posture that is upright, so not slouched over, but we also don't want to be sitting up so upright that we're uncomfortable. So just finding some ease in this posture. If you can, try to place your feet flat on the floor. Hands can be down by your sides or in your lap. And if it feels comfortable for you, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. If you'd like to keep your eyes open, you can just take your gaze downward towards the floor. So sitting in an alert but comfortable position, feet flat on the floor, eyes gently closed. And let's start just by noticing the feeling of our feet on the floor. Notice where each part of your foot comes into contact with the floor. Maybe notice the different points of pressure, tension, temperature. You might notice the texture of the floor beneath you, maybe the feeling of your socks or your shoes on your feet. Just using this as an opportunity to ground down in the present moment. Know that your feet are connected to the floor, and the floor is ultimately connected to the earth beneath us. Now we'll bring our awareness into the body now. See if you can take some time to just notice where in your body you most easily experience the sensation of breathing. This could be in your belly, maybe the rise and fall of your chest, Could also be in the tip of your nose or the back of your throat. It doesn't matter where you most easily feel this sensation of breathing, just as long as you can kind of pinpoint it. We're not trying to change the breath or manipulate it in any way. Just noticing where you most easily feel your natural, normal breath in the body. Take some time to find that now. And when you feel that point in your, find that. And when you find that point in your body, just allow your attention to rest there. Your breath will be your anchor for this meditation. So gently rest your attention there, knowing that when the mind wanders, it's no big deal. It's totally normal, totally natural. The mind is just doing what it's meant to do. When you notice that your mind has wandered, just gently redirect it back to the feeling of the breath in the body. Over and over again, the mind will wander. And over again, just gently redirect the attention back to the feeling of the breath in the body. See if you can bring that important, compassionate curiosity piece to your practice today. Allowing yourself to be kind and non-judgmental when you do notice that the mind has wandered. A common metaphor we use when discussing mindfulness is what we call the river of thought metaphor. In this metaphor, we talk about how our mind and our thoughts are a lot like a river. So with a river, sometimes the water might be really low, the water might be moving gently, might be just kind of a trickling stream, really calm and patient. And other days, maybe after a big storm, there's a lot of water between the banks, and it's moving quickly, it's rapid. It might seem a little dangerous and scary. The same can be said about our thoughts, right? Some days they just kind of trickle in and out. There's no urgency about them. Other days, maybe after a stressful event or a tough conversation, we have a ton of thoughts. They're moving really rapidly, and they might seem a little bit scary. It doesn't do any good to try to stop the river, right? Regardless of if it's moving slow or it's moving fast. We can't build up rocks and stop it, because then it would no longer be a river. The same is true for our thoughts. The goal is not to try to stop our thoughts, but rather to notice them. Maybe to notice if we've fallen in the water, if we've fallen into our thoughts, and if we're getting carried away by them. And when we notice that, we can just climb off onto the bank and just go back to watching the water, go back to watching our thoughts. So as you continue here in this meditation, see if you can just notice your thoughts from afar. Trying not to get caught away and pulled downstream with them. But also not trying to stop them. And when you're ready, you can gently welcome some movement into the body, maybe wiggling the toes or the fingers. You might take a big, deep breath in through your nose, out through the mouth. And then when you're ready, you can gently come on back and flutter your eyes open. So that was a very simple breath awareness meditation that we spent about 10 minutes in. So this is something that you can do on your own. Again, grabbing your phone or some sort of timer, finding a room in your house, and just allowing yourself to sit and be and focus on your breath for 10 minutes or maybe even 5 minutes or 3 minutes or 2 minutes even. So I highly encourage you to try that out if you feel like this might be something that you'd benefit from. Again, knowing that it's not the end all be all, that if you are struggling mentally, there are definitely other resources and potentially better resources out there for you. If that is something you could use some support in, I am more than happy to help you out with that. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. You can always shoot me an email or send me a DM on Instagram at Give 'Em the Bird Podcast. Let me know what your thoughts were, or if you've had any particular experience with mindfulness and you have other things to add, questions that are coming up, etc. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of GTB. If you're enjoying this podcast, feel free to head on over to Apple Podcasts and rate, review, and subscribe. You can also share this podcast on Instagram and tag me at Give 'Em the Bird Podcast. I will see you back here next week for another episode, but in the meantime, go give 'em the bird.